Welcome, and we're live to the Rican Show, episode 30. And I have two special guests. They're both running for my local school board in Pleasant Valley School District. And I'll let Janet and Annie introduce themselves. So, like that, you get to know two candidates who are running because other people have endless coffers to put up advertisements and all that. And these two women don't.
Okay, thank you.
So, whoever wants to go first.
I'll go first, Janet? Sure. Hi, thank you so much, Carlos. It's been about 2 years since we've met. We started at the school boards together. We started
Yep.
during COVID. That's where we met you, and I met your wonderful children. I haven't seen them in 2 years, so hopefully we'll meet them soon again. Thank you for having us. So I have lived here for 25 years. I stayed at home with my children. I left my career to stay at home with my first child. I have four. Three have graduated from Pleasant Valley. One is still at Pleasant Valley in the high school. I worked for 5 years as a monitor. That was a way that I could get back in and be with the kids is working as a monitor. When my oldest was in kindergarten, I volunteered. All through my children's career, I volunteered. I constantly volunteered in the school district, whether it was in classroom, whether it was tutoring, whether it was through sports clubs. I was always there. So I think that's pretty much me in a nutshell, is that I'm approachable. I've continued to go to school board meetings, and I just want to serve. That's all it is for me, is about service right now. Continued service.
Hi, thank you, Carlos, for having us. I really do appreciate this. My name is Antoinette, but I go by Annie Gravell. I've been in the West End for over 36 years. I, too, have volunteered in the school. I've been through the Polk PTO system until 8th grade. I was president for the last 4 years from like 5th grade on. I volunteer at the band parents. I still volunteer with the band parents whenever they need me. I started out up here as the East Stroudsburg Area School District tax collector. I did that for 9 years. So I am familiar with budgets and things like that. After that, I've got into healthcare. I do have a disabled daughter, so I have been through the complete IU system as well as the special ed program at Pleasant Valley. And I have a regular daughter who also graduated from Pleasant Valley and is now graduating from East Stroudsburg University and will soon be going on for her master's.
Oh, nice.
So I've had both ends of the spectrum.
Oh, just like me, because I have a special needs son, and I have a regular kid, that daughter who's in kindergarten. So, which Janet's met them both, so she knows how spirited they are.
It was fun. It was a good time. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Janet, I would not have been able to speak at the school board meeting because
I was there at that meeting. I was sitting over with Dr. Khan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Larry's a nice guy. I haven't seen him in a while. It was nice having him on too last year.
He has endorsed us, so it's a good thing.
That's all I need to know. The fact that I know Janet, that I've met Janet before, is besides the point. So, I wanted to give you guys a platform to be able to speak about what you guys, why, two, regular women, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it as, you're not a lawyer, you're not a doctor, you're not some sort of professional that, has money coming out of, their pockets to be able to do something like this, because this is not a paid position. Yeah. So, whoever wants to go first, want to say, what's pushed you to run?
I think I should start first. What pushed me to run was back when COVID started. My special daughter is vaccine injured, and they were pushing the vaccine so hard. I had to stand up. I had to say something. Not every child is okay with vaccines. My daughter became disabled, first one out of the gate. And I know because, to make a nutshell, I signed the papers, doctor's off the hook. She was 6 weeks early, so that left the pharmaceutical companies. Who's going to fight for these kids when you don't know what's in the vaccine? and they weren't allowing religious exemptions.
Oh, I've been there. My son was born premature too. My son was born at 24 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
so 6 months. So when he was 8 months, they wanted to give him a vaccine for a normal 2-month-old baby,
Mm-hmm.
and I told them, "Are you going to change the dosage?" And they're like, "No, we don't do that." Then no, you can't. You can't give him anything.
See, my thing is, it should be parental choice.
Oh no,
It
well,
should never be mandatory. It always should be parental choice.
no, I agree 100%. I think, there are kids like our kids, because my son also is vaccine injured. My son, um, he ended up getting seizures after it was either MMR or DTaP, because they got them both at the same time. So we don't know which particular one he got the reaction to, but that was the set that uh, caused him to have seizures.
Well, back in 2000 was DPT was the one, which would be the DTaP now. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Hmm.
the one that got my daughter.
So, I mean, like I said, since they got them both at the same time, I can't say which one it
Mm-hmm.
was. It could have been one, the other, or both. Who knows?
Exactly.
Hmm.
I think that we embarked on this journey to get involved, and we really stayed involved because we also started going to the GOP committees locally. We became committeemen. Um, as far as even the school district, though, we really never left. We continued to go to school board meetings. Um, I think it's just because it is called a service. There's a point in time I couldn't serve. My father wouldn't let me serve out of high school. I had to go to college. That was what I was told I had to do. Then you get out, you have debt, you have to pay your debt financially, and I started working. But I do think it is service. I think that this is a time in life when, if we have the opportunity to do something for others, because, there are people who have to work. Both people are working in a home. It's very difficult. I'm not working right now because my husband can work from home. I'm very blessed with that situation. 3 of my children are independent enough that I don't have to worry. My daughter is phenomenal because she'll support me with this. It is a call to service at this time for people who can't, for parents who can't work or who can't go to school board meetings. Maybe they would feel like, well, they're normal people. We can talk to them. We can shoot an email to their school approved email site, and they'll get back to me. I think that's important, that people know they can talk to us.
And it's not like we're not in the community. I'm actually given a time limit when I go to shop because I talk too much.
She does talk to me.
I'm notorious for the same thing. And Janet could tell you, she could protest to that I'm a talker too. And I think, well, when I spoke at the school board, someone wanted to give me their time, and they told them
I
no.
remember that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just it. I feel as being on the school board or running for school board, you need to be accessible to the people who own the school, or us, the taxpayers. We own that school. It's our
Yeah.
money that is paying for the school.
And
And
then one of the things that annoyed me the most about the school board meeting was you couldn't ask a question.
No.
They refused to answer any questions, and that annoyed me, because it's like, what are you hiding? What are you hiding that you can't answer a simple question?
We have a friend who has worked on a little survey, trying to get it out in the community, because we do need some type of parental committee. I know we have PTOs, but a lot of times they're PTOs, PTAs, a lot of their objective is fundraising.
Yes.
I do know they open up to the public the Title I meetings. They're coming up in PVE and PVI. But maybe there's just open-ended issues that aren't related to Title I at all that people want to talk about. And I think it's that type of gathering that we need to have. We need to have people come to a gathering to speak. Whether Annie has suggested, let's see the school board members at different activities. It doesn't have to be constant, but people need to know that you're willing to attend a football game, you're willing to go to a band concert, you're willing to go to a play, you're willing to go to an activity at PVE. I think that's important right now. People need to know that who represent them are right in front of them and willing to talk to them.
But the other problem, on the other hand, is the teachers have no one to talk to. The biggest thing, and I talk to a lot of teachers because my daughter had a lot of them. They know my daughter, they know me because I was in the school, I volunteered. And they'll say to me, we can't talk to our administrators. We can't talk to our principals. It goes on deaf ears. It's like, and there's such, it's not really, it's such conflict between the two, and there shouldn't be conflict. And that was the other thing I want to do as a school board member. Sit down with each grade. Have the union rep there, so everything's on the up and up, but no principals, no administrators, so they're free to talk. To see what's going on, what do they need? You know, I just spoke to a teacher, and she goes, the biggest thing is we keep changing curriculum. Every year I got a new curriculum. I got to teach. How can I teach a curriculum when I just learned the last one? And now they say, oh no, we're not going to use that. We're going to use this one. I mean, we've been through how many different apps, Schoolology, Google Classroom, and now we're on something else. Pick something.
I think they're making a transition within the school district to try to consolidate the grade system, the system that the teacher has to put all of their information in, the system that the teacher has to look up information in. I think for the past 2 or 3 years, they've been all over the place. At one time, I think teachers literally were using Google Classroom, Schoolology, and Infinite Campus. It was all over the map. So I think they are trying to consolidate that now. But can you imagine from the perspective of a teacher, the constant change from the technology side, as well as a change from curriculum side, as well as every year you're looking at new students coming in front of you. You want to love your students. You want to, get to know your students. But in the meantime, in the background, you have all this other stuff to learn. So I think from that point, I can empathize with the teacher. Like there's this constant fast-paced change in society. And we all need to take a break. Even kids need that slowdown right now, because it is coming fast and furious at everybody. And maybe at some point it'll all be consolidated. It'll be better. But right now there's a lot of change that I think parents, teachers, and our students need that support.
And we all know children work better with some sort of structure. As a special needs parent, that structure is very important. It gives them a sense of security. If the teachers don't feel secure because they have to keep learning and they can't, keep changing their stuff, how could they provide a secure classroom to make them feel safe? And like I said, every kid doesn't learn at the same rate. We need more paras in the classroom. And why does it have to be a para? I understand it's a paid teaching position, but if we can't find them, why can't we fill that in with parents? Parents come in. When I was at Polk, and Janet can attest, if a child was having trouble with this special thing, we were able to sit down with them out in the hallway and say, okay, what's going on? And help the child one-on-one without disrupting the class who was getting it. We have senior citizens in this community that just retired, really don't know what to do with themselves.
True.
Go through the clearances. Let's bring them in. If a child needs that little bit of help, who better than someone who actually been in the world that can sit down and say, okay, now 2 + 2 is 4, and this is why this is this way, or read to me, you'll get better at reading. I remember years ago, they said, read to your animal just to get better with reading. I mean, there are things we can do that's not going to cost the district money. But first, let's open it up to people who can get paid. Unfortunately, it will cost us money, but just think of how much better it would be for the child.
Well, it's like I just had a meeting, and there was something I threw because they were talking to me about money, and I'm like, if the district was so concerned about money, they wouldn't have, given so much money to a superintendent for a small school district. And she was like, that's a different topic. And I'm like, well, if you're going to throw money in my face, I'm going to throw it right back at you. Because, it seems like I've been here now for 3 years. And it seems like the school district really doesn't know how to manage the money that they get?
Well, we've been told the budget is balanced, so we'll
Yeah.
go with that. We'll go with what they've told us. But the one thing that we talk about all the time is during COVID, how much money came through through these ESSER grants. And it started with the American Rescue Plan when we first shut down with COVID, and then 21 rolled around, and it became the ESSER grants, the American Rescue Plan ESSER grants. We have the grant if anybody wants to read it, because we keep looking at it, because we keep going back and saying, what was this for? And that was over $5 million alone with the ESSER grant. And I think I just saw today, I was looking at, there was a bump up that we received, another 2.8 million. And some of it was supposed to be set aside. It was called a 7% set aside plan. There was money coming through the government again for lost education, LRO, I think they called it.
Yep.
Um,
Learning Recovery Act.
Yes. So, but the ESSER grant, what the ESSER grant did, even though it may have looked good on paper, it's where the health and safety plan came from. It's what really tied us to those masks. So it tied us to that fear for a long time, because for almost 2 years, we were cycled through of 2 days on for school, 2 days off for school. The kids were contact traced.
6 feet apart.
Mm-hmm. So all of that fear that we lived with for over 2 years, come to find out, it came with a lot of money. So that's disturbing in my mind, that's how they used us. That's kind of like trafficking,
right? Again,
selling people.
Again, we're not saying COVID wasn't a bad thing. It was a bad disease, yes. But I think the parent knows better for their child. Okay? And because you didn't want your child to wear a mask, you then had to fill out a 504, which is a special ed form, which means the school district got more money for that child now, because now that child has an IEP because it was a 504. In order to not wear a mask, they had to get a doctor. They had to go through a doctor saying there was a medical issue. Medical issues go through.
Some school districts were hit even harder with that. They really used the 504 plan. I'm not saying our school district did, but some school districts we found out. There are other places that we attend other meetings to try and learn what's going on in the school system. We're not just blind to say that everything is just a Pleasant Valley concern.
And we also look at the state, what's coming down the state, because whatever this federal and the state is doing, the school districts will have to do. So we're trying to keep ahead of it, so we know what's coming down. So when it arrives, we're not like, oh, look at this.
Well, yeah, you want to see what some of the other school districts are dealing with, what issues they're dealing with, because, if it's happening in this.
Right. Not only that, but what's working in their schools.
Well, yeah, I'm also looking at like some of the issues, like, if they're having drug issues with a new drug or something like that, it's going to come to our district too. It's not like we're impervious to what's going on in the other surrounding school districts.
Yeah. Now, should we talk about that a little bit? Because we always talk about safety, but it always leans towards a certain kind of safety, when the reality is the drugs are a problem.
Oh, yeah, I think that, if you want to get into it, I know coming from a big city, I'm from New York City, so it's, I see it from a different perspective, because drugs were always all around me. So it's not, but we live in a smaller community, and where, like, let's say I was in Chestnut Hill Park the other day, and I saw all these kids coming from the high school to hang out there at Chestnut Hill Park. And, you had some good kids, just playing basketball, whatever. And I see some other kids, and I'm like, I know what you guys are going to go do. It's, it's, as parents, we know that, they could get in the neighborhood, even though we're a semi-rural community. We're not, totally rural, but they're still accessible, and we know that they're getting it not just outside, but in the schools.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where you bring in parents. Parents can come in, walk the halls. A kid's more apt if they know there's parents all over the place. It's a lot harder to do something wrong. than it is when there's no paras, no monitors in the school walking around at all times.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I heard from someone. I'm gonna leave it like that. That there's a special needs kid that goes to regular classrooms. But I think he just has CP, so
Hmm.
he's physically handicapped, but mentally he's fine.
Hmm.
And some kids like just pushed him onto the floor and started making fun of him. And no one saw it. Well, someone saw it, but since they were the only ones that saw it, they didn't want to come out and say what happened because they were afraid of retaliation.
Hmm.
And the fact that there was no one in the halls to see that and say, hey, what's going on here, that was disturbing to me, especially that
Well,
having my special needs son, because I'm like, if someone did that to my son, I would be pissed.
I hope that the students who did see it spoke up because there's cameras, and I'm thinking you're saying this might be the high school, so they did add a lot of additional cameras at the high school. They did have grants to install new cameras. It still does not replace the human element, which I think is very important for kids right now because of COVID. I think the human element is more important than anything right now, is making sure we have good humans working around our kids. That's what's important to me, is that we have good people who can communicate to all different ages of kids. That's extremely important. Um, and just with the drug issue itself, I don't know if there's any school districts that ever report in their monthly meeting information generic. You don't have to give names. You never have to give a student's name. But do we ever really talk about what are the issues in our schools when it comes to how many fights, how many times were the cops in for a drug bust? We can't deny that it would happen. We can't turn our eye and say, oh, that never happens. But do we ever get the information that it did happen? I think that's what upsets me more, is that our kids have to come home. If I didn't have a person in the high school, I may not hear the things that I hear. But I think that the parents who don't talk to their kids, it should be there. It should be like you could look it up and say, oh, January was a rough month. There was a few fights, but it got better towards April. I think we need to start sharing that information so that people know maybe the school is great, maybe it's perfect, but we don't know yet because I don't think we've ever really talked about it. If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does.
and safety should always be first and foremost for the kids. And nothing is better than a person with eyes on. Eyes on, walk in the halls. They never know where you're going to be. In the elementary school, I was so lucky, and so was Janet. Our kids went to the small little elementary school called Polk. Those days are gone. I know that. But every kid knew who I was, and they knew they can come to me and say, hey, I need this, or hey, I'm having trouble with this, because they saw me on such a regular basis. Half of them call me mom and just answer. It wasn't anything, but they just knew me from always being there. And I think that sense of security needs to be back. High school kids, let's face it, they don't want the parents around. But if you're there looking around, the kid's going to think twice before they do something. It's not going to be perfect. Nothing ever is, because if the kids want drugs, it's going to happen.
Yes, I agree with that 100%.
And same thing with the vaping and everything else, but at least it makes it a little harder.
No, I agree. And I mean, yeah, I've heard about vaping in the high schools and in the bathrooms. I've heard about that stuff going on. So what would you say is the number one thing you want to work on if you manage to get elected?
Transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Open dialogue
Mm-hmm.
with everybody.
And what about you, Janet?
Well, I think we covered being open to the public, and I think that's part of the whole transparency. The safety we've talked about. I think right now the biggest thing, even before we get elected, is that people need to understand that there's a capital improvement project going on. And the last time they really will be going on. The last time they met and gathered as a committee was back in 2020?
2020, yeah.
So we are actually looking at plans that were started in 2020 at the height of COVID, and they weren't really discussed until now. And we're talking about borrowing up to
$100 million.
$100 million. So where is that going?
For 20 years, over a
Yeah.
20-year plan. The problem was there are things in the high school that should have been fixed back in 18, 19, 20 that weren't. And now it's to a point that there is no fixing it anymore. There's no Band-Aid that can happen. It has to be replaced. And with the price of everything, with the supply chain issues and everything else, costs have skyrocketed. Something that would have cost us 65, 70 million in 2020, when this should have started, is now costing us 100 million.
Yeah, so the capital improvement project is on the Pleasant Valley Bears website. People can scroll down, they can open it up. The last meeting we attended was April. We're in April.
Was the 12th. It was the Tuesday after Easter.
We attended that meeting, and it was discussed again. There is a funding proposal, which I think was March 9th.
Yep.
That can be found. And I think that people who are interested in knowing what is going on in the community, that's an important thing to start looking at. There's a lot of development that's going on around the high school. Of course, there's a circle and there's businesses. So, if this capital improvement project goes through, what's going to happen after it's finished? I mean, I think it goes on until 2027.
That's when the circle will be complete.
No, the circle will be in 24, but the capital improvement project, the plan is for it to be done in 2027. But I think it's, what is the projection forward? And Annie and I have talked about one of the things that somebody suggested to us to discuss is with the special needs students, a lot of the grouping of the classrooms was grouped by
English, math, but the IU is scattered all over the building. They want to group the English teachers together because the English teachers can talk and communicate. They want to group the math teachers together so they can communicate with each other. But they have special ed classrooms all over the place. And the other thing is, like you said, you heard a child got knocked over using a walker. Can you imagine a wheelchair person coming in to the school with there's not a designated area for them to come in safely with the other students?
You see what it's like in the morning, Carlos, at the front when we're dropping off there, how insane it is.
Yes.
It's so busy. And we're in 2023, we're going to have 4 years of craziness. And I just think the public, I would hope we can get people to understand, if you're in 6th grade now, you're going to be in the height of these repairs.
Right in the middle of the high school.
So yeah. I just want to make people aware of it. And hopefully through this show, people will say, oh, that's going on. Let's talk about it. Go to a school board meeting. Let's talk about what's going to happen to our children as they get to the high school. I think it's important.
Now, what do you think about, I know they do Zoom. Do they still do Zoom for the school board meetings? No, right? No, they stopped it.
They record it and you can watch it later, but there's no more Zoom.
There was talk about it, and it was supposed to cost $5,000. I don't know where it disappeared.
It was on a district planning meeting that they were going to reinstate it, but then it never made it to the board agenda and just disappeared again.
We'll have to follow up. There's just been so many topics that have been going on, and but I think that because of this project, it might be something that's worth it so that people can listen in to hear what's going on.
Yeah, because I think it's important not just to be able to see it live. Because let's say, you have a lot of people who work, they can't make it, they're tired, they want to relax, maybe they want to attend it, or my situation, it's like, unless I have someone coming with me, I can't go. It's hard for me to go with my 2 kids. My special needs son's fine, but the little one's going to be running all over the place, and I can, concentrate on talking and listening while that's going on. So I'm sure I'm not the only parent that has that issue, but if you're home watching it and being able to ask a question on Zoom, not asking a question, but
Let's
making a statement.
I know we're not allowed to
3
ask
minutes.
questions.
3 minutes, yes.
Yes, 3 minutes, and you're not allowed to ask any questions.
Let's not get down that rabbit hole of questions. I know, it disturbs us as well, and I understand that there has to be a decorum to certain things, but we feel like there's so many things we never have answers to, and why. It's like that with every level of government.
And so many things is done in executive session that they come out and say, okay, I'm looking for approval from 9A to 9C, and
it's done.
And they'll say, any discussion? And there's like maybe something really weird, like little, but nothing you can ask a question on.
Yeah, and even if you make a statement, they already know how they're going to answer that. The approval. It's not like they're asking the community for approval. They're just telling the community, we're going to do this. We're going to vote on it in front of you, but we don't care what you tell us anyway. It's not like we're going to change their vote when we go there and speak.
Does anybody ever wonder where the money really comes from, whether it's a grant, whether it's state, whether it's federal, whether it is actually your tax dollars because you live here? Do people really think about it, that they're all different funnels of taxpayer dollars somehow? Mm-hmm. You know, there were not goods that are producible with. It's not a true economic system of we grow vegetables and we sell them. We grow something, we make something and sell it. No, this is taxpayer funded. School is taxpayer funded. And
now it's necessary because we have to educate our children. But when you keep changing things and putting in all these other programs, okay, 20 years ago when my daughter started, they took phonics out of the school system. This year it's like, oh, let's bring phonics back. We should have never got it out. Our school, ever since core education was brought in and no child left behind. Now, do I think any child should be left behind? No. I think help should be given. We should do everything we can to get that child through. But by the same token, we were doing so well teaching 2 + 2 = 4. They didn't need to know the theory on how 2 + 2 got to 4. Just that 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up both programs because, you know, people always want to make it a left-right issue, and it's like it's not. No. You know, you had, you know, Bush's terrible No Child Left Behind Act, which it's like, oh, it's nice to say in theory, but when you're making all these mandates but no funding, you know, that
no
sucks.
Help.
And then you have, you know, Common Core, the stuff that came in with Common Core that totally changed things around where parents can't even teach their, you know, kids math because, you know, they do these whole different convoluted steps. And I was good at math. I was done with math in like my sophomore year of high school. I was taking calculus and AP calculus in high school. So it's not like I'm someone who's dumb at math, but I'm seeing this and I'm like, why are you going through all of this for? It doesn't make it any easier. It makes it more confusing.
Mm-hmm. No, I think to me the whole education thing is just, and we talked about this at the last planning meeting or 2 planning meetings ago where the MCTI, because our county has something called MCTI, and we can't grow MCTI, which is like your trade-based schools. Mm-hmm. We can't grow that because it's tied into all of the schools, the 4 school districts in Monroe County. If this country has a deficit in trade workers, plumbers, electricians, even beauticians, welders, why can't we grow that program? We're tied. We're tied because of money. Everybody keeps complaining about charter school. To me, these are all funding issues. And if you were told that you cannot attend the charter school of your choice or the private charter because you had to attend the school cyber school because they say it's better, where does that leave us? You know, that's another mandate. And I think there is such a complex, the funding is such a complex issue. It's not something that anybody can sit down and say, school choice, it's going to work. It's not that easy. But I think the most disappointing part about education to me is the fact that we are not growing important things. We continually push college, which we know how much college costs, or we don't know because they want to tell you it only costs $32,000, which is the federal loan part. They don't tell you the rest of it. So it's very stressful.
Yeah. I
That
used to.
pathway.
I lived in Texas before I lived here, so I used to teach Sunday school, and I used to encourage my kids. I used to encourage them. I said, um, if you don't want to go to college, I said, go to a trade school. I said you could you could go to learn to be an electrician. You could do that in a year or two, and instead of having, $50,000, $100,000 in debt getting a college degree, you could in 2 years you'd be 20 and you'd be making almost $100,000 a year.
Hmm.
What's wrong with that?
Now I'm going to date myself. I went to school in New Jersey. I graduated in 82. Okay. So I went through the disco era, the whole 9 yards. Okay.
Hmm.
When I was in school, you had 3 paths to go through. By the time you got to high school, okay, basically the freshman year, I went college prep. Okay, you either went college prep and you took these courses, and then you got to pick these specials, or you went VOTEC, which is, and then you only had to take these courses, and the rest of your time you're at the VOTEC school, or you went business, and then you had to take all this accounting, this and this. Well, I found out college wasn't for me, so I switched to business. 1 year I had accounting 1, stenography, typing.
Mm.
But when I got done with high school, I could be a secretary. I had the skills I needed graduating high school to be a secretary. I went into banking because I had the skills to do that from high school. We're not giving our kids anything that they can take out into the real world
No.
and say, okay, I didn't go to college, but look, I can type really well. I know Excel. I know, and
Hmm.
these kids are so much smarter than I am when it comes to technology that they can get a job doing that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, have, in the tech schools, you could do stuff like that. You could do computer programming. So like that, maybe they could write software. Maybe they could uh, make video games or something like that. Something where, they don't have to necessarily go to 4 years of college, get a bunch of debt, and then go out into the real world and be, debt slaves.
Mm-hmm. But if you look at the school pathway the pathways
Hmm.
chart they put up,
Act 158.
Act 158, I looked at the flow chart. I got confused. I got lost going
Yeah,
through it.
the new requirements for graduation is called Act 158, I believe. Take
Uh-huh.
a look at the chart. Oh my goodness, you'll get a headache looking at it because it's like you have yes, no, because
But
it's all
parents,
based.
need, but
Yeah.
parents need to look at this.
Yeah,
This
parents do need to look at the requirements because everything, of course, is tied into these standard tests. Whether you start your Keystone, you start what is it, PSSAs, then you move up to Keystones, and then some kids go on and take their SATs
Or
or
the
their
ACTs.
ACTs and stuff like so. Yeah, we got a lot of work to do, Carlos.
There you go. Someone has a question. Creative Mind asked, I see school trips are coming back. Anything else coming back or anything that you ladies would want PV to get back,
Oh,
i.e.
that's
like
so cute.
father-daughter dances?
I would love to see that come back. Like I said, when I was at Polk, we used to have movie night for the families. Everyone came in pajamas and we watched a movie.
Mhm.
We had pumpkin carving at night
Mhm.
for families to come and do pumpkin carving. I think the elementary school still does do stuff like that. But
Oh, the father-daughter dance, I think that was the one thing I was able to get my husband to come all the way back from Harrisburg to do with my daughter because he worked in Harrisburg.
Mhm.
What I could say, and I don't know who answered that question, but I'm on Facebook, and if I think all those ideas are good. And I said we're trying to get a survey out there that is going. I think that's posted on the Pleasant Valley community page.
But I would like to say something about field trips. You got to understand, because parents would have to pick their child up after a field trip. All field trips must be done during the school day,
Yeah,
and that limits where the kids go.
of course.
And like I said, when I was in Jersey, parents picked us up. We went to Great Adventure. It was our 8th grade class trip.
Yeah, I think they tried to do a field trip this year. It was too far. I know we've always done.
But then you have transportation, and we don't have our own transportation anymore. We go through First Student. So there's that whole dynamic which has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I know. My son had a couple of trips with the IU that got canceled because they didn't have enough drivers to drive the kids to wherever they were taking them.
Well, last year they did. Was it last year when they opened up the stadium, or was it 2 years ago? They did that big activity. I don't know if it was a dodgeball on the field. I don't know if the person who asked that question remembers that, but it was a huge success. So I don't know what happened
Oh yeah,
to that.
that's yeah. Goes here, creative minds, but it's also a little frustrating how IU excludes special needs kids from school events. And
Go ahead. I was just going to say on the 19th, which is Wednesday, is the transitions program.
because I was going to say they had a spirit event where they did the bonfire.
Yes.
And none of the IU kids were allowed because my son would have loved it. You know, my niece, my son and my niece are a year apart. She's a year younger than him, and she was like, "Where's my cousin?"
Well, how come they weren't allowed? What do you mean they weren't allowed?
They weren't allowed. They didn't. They weren't. They weren't. They wouldn't take them there to participate.
See, that we did it. We didn't know.
Yeah. Well, now
Now we know. Now we know,
Yeah,
and
they
that's
do.
something they shouldn't be excluded. I mean, they're part of the school system, so
Yeah.
they need to have maybe because they couldn't have an aide there. I'm just spitballing here.
my
Maybe
son
they
has a
could-
nurse. My son has a
Right.
private duty nurse with him that could have,
Could've
pushed
went.
him around, but it wasn't offered, for
Okay.
him to go.
Well, I know, like I said, Wednesday night is the transitions program, and I don't know the person who is asking the questions.
Mhm.
It might be a good idea if they go. Maybe there'll be people there who can speak to that person if there's specific things that feel like they're missing on the activity side. And I don't know what age that person is, that student that they're talking about, but
Mhm.
I think it's all communication,
Oh,
knowing who to
well.
talk to.
There you go. She was told the staff assumes the kids won't enjoy it or that it may be too loud for them.
Oh,
Then that's parents' decision.
that is a parent's decision.
That's a parent's choice. My daughter has sensory issues when it comes to loud music, but that didn't exclude her. She went. Pleasant Valley didn't have a class for her, so she went to Stroudsburg. Stroudsburg did include her. She could have gone to the prom. But music is just too loud. She just
Yeah.
can't handle it. So I opted her not to go. But that was my choice. It wasn't the school's choice.
No, I agree, but
And
they gave you the option.
They gave me the option. And that, again, parent option. Parents need to know.
Or it goes back to communications, and a lot of those communications probably come from that first primary contact of the person that your child has at the school, and hopefully everything is taken seriously. I do know that the teachers were supposed to be making phone calls, cycling through their students and making a phone call. At least once a month, I think they were supposed to cycle through their students. I hope that was across the board, to special needs, to mainstream students. However, hopefully, that I would think that it was across the board. So whoever that person is, I hope that maybe I'm going to transitions night. It's Wednesday night. You'll recognize my face. Maybe that person, if they're there, they'll talk to me. I don't know if you can go because of your night.
I'm going to try to go too.
Okay. So is there any last issues that you guys want to touch on before
I don't have questions. This is for you as well, Carlos. These are things like for your audience. It's not about us. It's about the people who have questions.
Because let's face it, that's who we're representing. We're representing the people, and they need to have their voices heard.
Oh, there's to the people who are watching. Oh, you know what? I forgot to click on. Let me just check Rumble real quick. I forgot to. My what I use streams both to YouTube and Rumble. There you go. So someone does have a question on Rumble. They put, can school gymnasium or cafeteria be used as a childcare space during school board meetings to help parents attend? Of course, supervised staff by teachers and parents. It's a good question.
It is a very good question. And right now for some reason, they moved us back. They moved us out of the high school
Back to the administration building.
back to the administration building. But
Are you
that's a really
serious?
good question.
That's where the
Yeah.
school board meeting is
It's
in
back
the.
in that little administration room. I'm not sure why, but that's where it's at.
Mhm.
But so childcare, as far as, again, it's going to depend on volunteers, and it's
Of
going to
course.
depend on
Clearances. And
Mhm.
if it's a teacher, then there's going to be a paid stipend because teachers want to get paid.
Oh, of
But
course.
it doesn't mean that question isn't a valid
It's
question.
a very valid question.
And I think that goes back to one of our good friends really wants to see a citizens advisory committee. And the person that just asked you that question, again, stay active. Please stay active.
Please.
You can email that question. They can email that question now to the
Yeah,
superintendent.
he goes by Manimal Rican. I know who he is.
I think I do
We
too.
do,
Though.
we do, so I know who
I
he
think I know
is.
that too. So, but yeah, but you can email those questions to the superintendent.
Monday of the school board meeting, which is this week, next week. Between Monday when the school board agenda comes out and Tuesday night midnight, you can actually email questions to the superintendent.
I think we have to ask about that Zoom again, because the person who's asking that question, I don't know if the Zoom would help, but
Yeah.
I think it does help.
Yeah.
I know for me it would help because I remember, I didn't go to some of the in-person meetings, but I was listening in and sometimes commenting on the Zoom meetings because it was much easier for me just to have my headphones on and do the stuff around the house while I'm
Absolutely,
listening
yes.
to the school board
Well,
meeting.
same thing with parents who have kids in sports.
Yeah.
You're just sitting there watching your kid run back and forth. I mean, they could put an earpiece in and at least
Yeah.
listen to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And
No,
I think that's so
I think
important.
but I think part of me feels that that's the disconnect, because if they were really connected to the community, they would have never stopped the Zoom sessions.
Yeah, I think it would have kept the flow going, and maybe that was part of it. Because we had a good flow of people watching and listening,
Mm-hmm.
and we've lost that flow. And I think it's very sad because there's good things and there's bad things going on,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
people are busy.
you got a lot of parents that work in New York,
Mm-hmm.
or like you said, your husband worked in Harrisburg, that you want to be, let's say they're commuting back here from New York, and they can't make it in time to the meeting, but they could listen to it on the bus ride or the drive ride home.
Yep.
So
Now, for people who want to communicate to the current board, they have to remember when they do emails to email each school board member separately. That's important. You email them once as one general email. You have to do it separately. So look at the board member, contact each one with an individual email.
And if I'm not mistaken, only the school board president can answer back.
Yes. Well, I think if they're answered individually, no. I thought if they email individually, they can. But if they put it together, only the school board president can answer back. So, yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy? Isn't it absolutely crazy?
All these rules you have to know.
You have to know. all
yeah,
these
I know.
rules.
You would think they'd have like an easy distribution list that you're not emailing each instead of
It's
individual.
absolutely silly.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
The
hard
house
to
is
call.
burning down. Let's go and check on it first. Let's go see who we're gonna call
to
first.
me, I've worked in different places where they make with the IT person, you could just call up the IT person and ask them, hey, could you make this into a list so like that all these people receive the email, so like that you're not emailing 50 people for one
Correct. Ticket item. Creating ticket items. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's
Well, I hope that we, communication, yes, because I'm as frustrated. Look what happened just today. Last
today.
night, we find out that there is a heightened security risk, right? We get that through an email, through a phone call at the high school, but it says all. So some people are asking, so that means all the schools have heightened security. It's whatever time it is now, we still didn't get a phone call that everything was okay. Like that little simple task of by 8 or 9 a.m. this morning, the threat is reduced, it's gone, or at least the threat is reduced. All the students are accounted for. Everything's okay. A simple phone call back at that point in the day would have provided a lot better communication to make parents feel like things are in control. And I think that's the big part. We just want to know, is there control? A simple, everything is okay. We're closing the doors. The teachers are going to close the doors today. Everything's okay. Because we don't even know what the threat was.
Exactly.
We don't know what the threat was. So whoever Creative Minds is, thank you. I can see it.
Thank you so much.
Maybe someday we'll meet.
Yes.
So.
Well, okay. Well, I think that is there a last pitch you guys want to make before we sign off? One last pitch to people. Maybe that could be your little. Make it like 60 seconds each.
Sure. Vote for us. In-person voting is happening now. Please, if you can't get to the polls, vote by mail. In-person voting is May 16th. Know that if we are elected, the two of us, we will give 200%. We're already working hard so that when we get into the school board, we will hit the ground running. There's not much of a learning curve for us. And thank you so much for having us on. We appreciate you giving us a chance.
Anytime. Hey, I did it last year for Larry too.
I know. I listened to it today. I went through a lot of your podcasts. Yes. They're really good. I'm going to keep following it because for a while I wasn't listening as much. I'm just so busy and so focused on just the school district stuff. That's all I could focus on. But yeah, I enjoyed.
I'm the same way because I used to do this every day. I used to do a show every day, and it became too time consuming. It's, people don't realize what goes into when you're doing a show, how much reading you have to do, how much listening you have to do just to go on here and talk for like 10, 15 minutes about something. You have to do hours of reading. Not necessarily just about that topic, but about surrounding topics about it. And, people think it's, I have a lot of respect for people who do this for a living and that this is what they do because, like I said, so much reading, so much listening. It's, it hurts your head sometimes. So,
it does.
Yeah. So
I was up till 2 o'clock last night trying to, because tomorrow there's an assembly at the high school.
Wow.
And I looked it up because I'm like, who is this Flint Head or some kind of thing, and I have to look it up. But I was up till 2 a.m. just trying to, what's going on with the safety thing?
It's not even on the PV website.
No, it's not on the PV website. Just the high school was notified through a phone call about the assembly that's happening. Exactly. I know. I was as well today. I actually drove my daughter in late because I'm like, I'm going to take her in late, and I prayed a lot. Like I don't know if I was nervous about the incident because I do have faith in people. I do have faith in people. I was okay when she wanted to go, and I was okay with that. She needed to go to school. I was okay with it. Most of the time she doesn't want to go, but I think the communication back, a phone call, maybe around 8 or 9 o'clock. There's a lot of things we can talk about. So hopefully we'll talk again, Carlos, soon. This is fabulous what you are doing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We could give you people every week.
Yeah, we can.
I'd try. I was going to say, if you want to come on before the election to, just to get yourself a little more exposure, I'm more than happy to have you ladies on.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Say hello to your son and daughter, and I hope to see them again soon.
Thank you. Well, I'm gonna end the live, but don't hang up yet. I just so we could finish up offline.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So,
thank you, everyone. Thank you.
So just March. You hear me? May 16th is election here at our school district in Monroe County. So vote for if you take the time to vote for Janet and Annie, and if you can't. Go in person, early voting has already started.
Correct.
Mail-in ballot.
So with that being said, hope everyone enjoyed the show and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.